Elvis Costello, welcome to Australian Musician.
It's good to be with you.
On January 14, you release yet another album, The Boy Named If. Also available, if people wish, is an 88-page hard book, or hardcover book, full of short stories which accompany the lyrics. I'm just wondering, which came first, the stories or the lyrics?
The songs came first. The songs came first, all in a rush. I guess last summer, where we had come back rather hurriedly. When the world had different plans for us. I found myself back on Vancouver Island with my family, just a few weeks having been on stage at the Hammersmith Apollo in full flight. With the Imposters, and you know, I had a couple of records already under construction, so to speak. I had been recording in Helsinki and Paris before that tour. I finished off that record in the spring um, of last year when I got back. I guess the next couple of months. Uh, Meanwhile, Sebastian and Chris had been working on Spanish Model, which is another record which came out this year. But we had that pretty much ready to go when I was home. We said, well, there's not a lot of point in putting out a record when nobody's really paying attention to anything other than when is the world going to start again, and there's nobody's paying much attention to new releases, and we were hoping to get together with some of our friends that did the singing on that record, which, as you know, was a remix of this year's Model from 1978 with all new vocals by a group of Spanish-speaking artists singing their adaptations or adaptations that we provided for them. So there was two records. Well, of course, my band were, of course, also wondering when we were going to get back to work, and in conversations with Pete Thomas, our drummer, led to me sending him a brand new song that I had written just after finishing on my work on those two discs that I spoke of, knowing that they couldn't come out into the world for a while. I couldn't think of anything better to do than make a third record. You know, why not? Let's make as many as we can. Um, and because all these songs came to me in I guess in a fairly short order of time, and because of the nature of the music that emerged, it suited the way we were set up at that time, which was, of course, everybody in their own lair. Pete's in his basement with his drum kit. I'm down I'm out in the back garden sometimes with my microphone. Out on the veranda, and so it came. So the songs definitely came first, both the writing and the recording. And before we really had time to have any kind of scheme about it, we found we had finished the record. We'd all added our parts in turn, but I think we played with a unified purpose. And I would say, from listening to it, almost like more more abandon and certainly less inhibition than if we'd actually been in the room. I can't really explain why that should be, except that perhaps when you've done a lot of work together and you all assemble, there's that feeling of where you go, how are we going to make it better than we've ever done it before? But if you're not looking at one another, you don't have any fear about that. You just do your best for those 3 or 4 minutes that you're playing the song.
Yeah.
I think the problem then was that when we started to plan the release of the record, I very much wanted there to be a physical object at the center of the story. I didn't want it just to be a group of songs thrown into the stream carelessly. I wanted to at least propose to people that it was that these songs are heard all together and in this sequence. And a vinyl record would be one way of doing that, but there was actually supposedly a vinyl shortage. So I said, okay, I'll write a book, because I'd already done the cover, and that was a picture of a storybook. So I thought, well, why not? Why not just make that book a physical reality? And when you open it up, there are stories that are something more about these tales and these characters. Maybe it's a scene immediately before the song starts playing. Maybe it's a scene after it starts playing. Maybe it's something going on in the background. I don't know.
Yeah,
You have to read and make your own mind up. I don't know whether you've seen those stories, but you get the idea. They run parallel to the songs for sure.
yeah,
And I really enjoyed writing them. And I wrote them really with the same, the same kind of, uh, I don't know what the word for it would be. They just came to me very quickly, the way the songs had done, and they all seemed to be these ideas that were running together. I'd been doing various illustrations for a number of years, and it seemed just completely the right thing to be providing these funny, sometimes macabre daubs. I'm not making any great claims for their artistic excellence, but they definitely are my imagining. So it all hangs together in some kind of dream
yeah.
like way.
It,
I hope that people enjoy it.
yeah, it's also beautifully illustrated by a mysterious chap named Eamon Singer, also also known as Elvis Costello. Well, what do you get out of creating visual art? Is there a therapeutic value in it that maybe you don't get from songwriting?
I have to be honest, yes, and there was a very personal way in which that was true. I mean, when I first did, Eamon Singer's had a bit of a patchy career as a visual artist, I have to say. His work has not been seen very often in the greater galleries of the world. I mean, there's one, I think 1984 was his first appearance in print. Um, there's a painting, actual painting, with real paint, that's in the package of Goodbye Cruel World, and there's another one on the cover of Blood and Chocolate. And then I didn't do anything with a brush um, for many, many years. I did one piece for a sort of benefit initiative, and that I was asked to do. Other than that, just doodles and things, pencil drawings and so forth. And then a few years ago, I realized that there was a new way to do it, which is with an electric pencil, on an iPad, which heaven knows is good enough for David Hockney, they tell me. So, you know, learn from the greats. Um, and I started doing it as a sort of defacing my old record covers. I wanted to draw characters into them and subvert the titles of some of my old records. For a tour we were doing, I wanted to do backdrops, so those were static images that were on a screen behind us. And then it was in 2018, after we had made Look Now. Um, my mother was in hospital, and I found it while she was recovering from a stroke, and though I spent a lot of time visiting her in the hospital and sitting with her. And of course, conversation was non-existent, and there were other people in the ward, and you didn't, some of them were in distress, and some of them were sleeping. So it's not like I could take my guitar in there and serenade her. So I just wanted to sit and, take my time and spend the time that at that moment seemed to be maybe all we would have. And I just started drawing, and I found it very consoling. And the fact that the drawings were really silly in many cases, or like total fantasies, or uh, sometimes quite macabre thoughts, had nothing to do with those circumstances, but the action of drawing. And also the fact that the pencil itself allowed me to imitate techniques that I could have never possibly have mastered. It's a little bit like sampling for the eyes. It's the same way as you might borrow a rhythm of somebody else's record to build a new foundation of music. It's a little bit like that. Anyway, I didn't really think about that until quite recently, how I came about to do it. But the illustrations made an appearance in the artwork of that record, and several since then. And now they seem to have taken a more central place in this particular version of the record. Not for everybody, obviously, because there's only 6,000 of
Yeah.
these books. So I don't know how they'll be distributed. Maybe we'll only sell 6,000 records. I don't know. Maybe they'll all be those books. I don't know. Who knows these days? But I really enjoyed doing it, and they printed it very beautifully. I mean, you've seen and the typesetting and everything of my stories, and the lyrics, we laid out against colored backgrounds that I'd created.
Mm.
And my friend Coco Shinemaya did a beautiful job with the layout of both the book and the record jacket. And so there it is, a physical object at the center of this swirling torrent of bytes and
Elvis,
ones and zeros.
Steve Naive's Vox Continental has always been a big part of your sound, and it features on this album too. Magnificent Hurt is one example of that. Do you recall who the artists were back in the day when you first heard the Vox or the Farfisa that turned you onto that sound?
I think it's a little bit like Fenders and Gibsons. I think of most of my favorite guitar players are Fender players. There's a few, I like the hollow bodied Gibsons more than the solid Gibsons. Um, so same it is with the Vox. The Vox Continental to my ear is a much more interesting instrument than the Farfisa. Some people confuse them, but I think they're very different.
Mm.
And I think probably the first one I heard was Alan Price. With the Owls. I believe he was playing one. I might be wrong. Augie Myers of Sir Douglas Quintet. I think that was a Vox Continental. I really don't know who was playing what, because the information about those things was scarce. Question Mark and the Mysterians. A lot of the punkier groups from the late 60s, before punk was a style, when it was just the way they referred to them, garage band, I suppose. You heard those thin organ sounds, and I always liked them. And the Beatles had one. I think there's John Lennon played one at Shea Stadium. I think that's a Vox Continental. So that was good enough for me. The fact that John played it with his elbows seemed to be kind of about in line with my technique as a pianist, really. I thought, well, must be doing all right if John plays it with his elbows.
Yeah.
Of course, that was before we kidnapped Steve Naive when he was 18, and he. It is true that when he plays it, people really notice it. The strange thing about the Magnificent Hurt is he isn't playing his usual role. He's not leading. You know, he's sort of answering. That's maybe why I think people really respond to the organ on that track because he's really playing the answer.
Mm.
Davey and I are laying down the main figure, and Steve is playing in the hole, which isn't what he normally does because he's usually the first out of the gate, so to speak. If this were a dog race, he would be the first out of the gate. But in this case, he spoke last in our conversation between us. And he actually complained that there was nowhere for him to play on Penelope Halfpenny initially because he said it sounds finished with a three-piece band. And I said, no, I think you'll probably find there's some other notes we haven't played yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the ingenuity of his playing is really can be heard on Magnificent Hurt, but it's not the most. It's not the punctuations to the main riff that I really value. If you listen to my guitar solo, which is particularly kind of dissonant, listen to what he's playing and listen how ingeniously he gets within the notes I'm playing and complements. He's playing other voices of those chords, and that shows his ability always to think from the inside out, and that's really what he does on the Man You Love to Hate, which is a song that he really dominates on the piano.
Mm.
And I would say that that's the closest I've ever been to Steve when he's been recording. Because, when you're in the studio together, you're the other side of the room and you're not really watching the hands. And even when he would do an overdub, I would be in the control room listening and saying, the thing with Steve is often to say, that really amazing thing you just played? Play that every time that comes around. And he often will have an inability to stick with that really great motif. And he'll the next time it comes around, he'll play something totally different, or he'll play a different inversion. I go, no, the first thing you you played is really a hook. These other things are also good, but they're not. They don't stick in the mind. And I had to persuade him sometimes that some of his most famous parts were his best idea came first, and all the other things are the things he might play on another night on a live performance.
Yeah.
So in this case, I got to watch him unpick the arrangement that we had laid down with just bass, drums, and guitar, and it was really fascinating after 45 years to see how his mind worked, really up close, because I'm watching on one of the rare times that we actually got on a video link while we were talking about this arrangement. And he was doing all these overlapping piano parts, And I literally couldn't believe what I was hearing or seeing, because any two parts heard independently didn't sound like they would work, but all together they sounded magical. So it's pretty great when somebody you've worked with so long can totally take your breath away, you know?
Yeah.
And not in some sort of super show off way, but in a way that was really serving the song.
Yeah. Do you still enjoy laying down guitar tracks in the studio? Is that part of the process that you really love?
I don't, if you listen to this record, there are not a lot of guitars. There's mostly, you know, there's, I mean, there are two more guitar solos on this record on most of my records. So that's, that's a difference. One of them, I think, is, as I say, the one on Magnificent Her. Well, you've got a title like that, it can't be a pretty solo. It's got to be crooked, hasn't it? It's got to be a bit twisted. And the one on What If I Can't Give You Anything But Love? Well, I think that's unusual for me because I don't usually go for the sort of expressive uh, complement to the voice. You know, I usually find I can get where I want with my voice, but in this, I wanted there to be a bit more of a cry on the guitar. Um, Other times, I'm really just playing, the rhythm or some sort of figure that will sort of turn a corner, like the guitar figures in Penelope and Mistook Me for a Friend. Maybe that some of those are double tracked. I think most of it's one guitar. You know, I use the same guitar on every song on the record, about one, I think.
The
I use my Jazzmaster on every single track. I think I maybe used an acoustic guitar on a couple of songs and maybe an Epiphone. I don't think there's any other. Usually I have five or six different guitars but because I was not in a studio, I didn't have all the equipment that I would normally have, and maybe that also, made me find the sounds I wanted from the guitar I know best.
Mm. And how's your cutoff valve? Is it easy for you to say a song or an album is done?
In this case, it was because the songs were all really kind of did hang together in theme. And I must have recognized that at some point, but I didn't feel as if I had preconceived it as some sort of concept record or some nonsense like that. There were a group of songs where the mind will obviously circle around certain themes and interests, and I made a point of letting the music come out via the guitar, where all the harmonic possibilities are facing away from you, and you can't be tempted into ever more elaborate harmony the way you might be on the piano when the piano is sitting in front of you. So I think it was a good thing that I had the guitar in my hands, because that brought the tempo up, and I made the only conscious decision I made was to see how many songs I could write in major keys. Because I tend to like melancholy minor key songs, and I had written quite a few for certainly a lot of ballads on Hey Clockface. So I wanted this to be a record of energy, particularly where we were sitting in the world. I didn't want to start sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I wanted to show a sign of life, and I thought if we all engaged in that purpose, it would be great for everybody. And that's what everybody in the band said. It was really good to feel like we were moving, going somewhere, even when we were actually all in one place for quite a while. And we didn't really work for that long on this record. It became, we could sense it was finished pretty quickly, and there was nothing more I wanted to add. Um,
Yeah.
and we have been back out to play. Not very long ago, we did 22 dates in America, and of course we had many of the songs from this record. We played them for the first time in front of an audience before they'd ever heard the recorded version.
Mm.
So that's always exciting because there's a bit of a risk. And we also had several songs from Hey Clockface. Some I'd recorded in Paris, but no, I'd recorded in with a friend from New York, and several I recorded in Helsinki. But I did those all on my own. So obviously, giving them to the band to play, they changed. Davey also learned to play the upright bass during the time he was off the road, so that gave us something new in the rhythm. And Charlie Sexton joined us on guitar, so it's the first time we've had a second guitar player for a whole tour.
Mm.
In the Imposters, certainly. We've had guest guitar players come and sit in from now and again, but we've done shows with just two guitars, but we've never had a second guitar player throughout a whole tour.
Yeah. Well, Elvis, we've been told we have to wrap up. Boy named Dick.
Like his shirt, man.
Yeah, the venue's closed down. Uh,
Where is it?
BB King's in New York.
Is that gone? BB
Yeah,
King's?
yeah, it's not there now.
Oh, that's a shame. It's on 42nd Street. It's a kind of slightly rugged kind of strip
Yeah.
there, you know. I played there one night with Hubert Sumlin and Levon Helm. It was
Okay.
pretty great. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All
it
right.
was one.
It's been great to
Very
chat,
nice to see you.
and congratulations on the album. It's
Thank you.
fabulous.
Thank you. Take care now. Bye now.